from JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Teisha Bader.
I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Monday, June the 23rd, 2025. The IDF today continued its targeted airstrikes on Iranian military sites, hitting, it said, command centers and assets belonging to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, as well as headquarters of one of its central armed bases of power. Responsible, the IDF said, for enforcing Islamic law and reporting civilian violations to regime authorities, among other sites. Also hitting 6 regime airports across Iran, including aircraft, it said, that were meant to stop Israeli Air Force jets, as well as hitting critical machinery used in the production of engines for missiles launched by the Iranian regime toward Israel. The Israeli airstrikes followed the unprecedented U.S. airstrikes Saturday night on the Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan nuclear sites in Iran. U.S. President Donald Trump made a special statement to the public several hours after the operation was carried out Saturday, saying, "Tonight I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated." Trump thanking Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he said, "We worked as a team like perhaps no team has ever worked before, and we've gone a long way to erasing this horrible threat to Israel." Netanyahu thanked President Trump and lauded this remarkable show of strength by the United States, saying, "Your bold decision to target Iran's nuclear facilities will change history." Israel's President Isaac Herzog thanked President Trump and the United States, writing, "In the pages of human history, this is a moment when the principles of liberty, responsibility, and security have triumphed. This brave step serves the security and safety of the entire free world." Herzog said, "I hope it will lead to a better future for the Middle East and help advance the urgent release of our hostages held in captivity in Gaza." And many Jewish organizations here in the U.S. shared their support for the U.S. airstrikes. The Jewish Federations of North America saying, "We could not be prouder to have the United States join together with the State of Israel in defense of the free world." B'nai B'rith International wrote, "This U.S. action will lead to a safer, stable Middle East and beyond." World Jewish Congress saying, "We commend the U.S. for standing shoulder to shoulder with Israel in the face of an existential threat. By joining efforts to neutralize Iran's nuclear capabilities, the U.S. is affirming its role as a global leader in defending freedom, democracy, and the Jewish people." CEO of the Anti-Defamation League, Jonathan Greenblatt, said, "In the end, striking these sites was the right thing to do." He said, "This is an existential struggle between two competing ideologies, freedom versus fanaticism, liberalism versus terror. Tonight," he said on Saturday, "America reminded the world terror regimes cannot get a nuclear weapon." Meanwhile, missile attacks from Iran on Israel continue over the last 4 days since our last newscast and into today, sending millions of Israel's residents to bomb shelters and safe rooms, with most of the missiles intercepted, though some did make impact, with reports of injuries and massive damage, including in residential areas over the last several days and on a hospital in southern Israel this past Thursday. And the IDF yesterday announced that the remains of 3 hostages murdered by terrorists during the October 7th Hamas massacre, their bodies abducted to Gaza, were recovered and returned to Israel, saying the bodies of Staff Sergeant Shai Levinson, Yonatan Samarano, and Ofra Kedar, who were held hostage for 625 days in Gaza, have been recovered in a joint IDF and ISA military operation. The IDF and Israel's leaders sharing their condolences with the families, including the Prime Minister, who said the campaign to return the hostages is ongoing and is continuing in parallel to our campaign against Iran. "We will not rest until we return home all of our hostages, the living and the deceased." And yesterday at the weekly rally for the hostages in Central Park in New York City, and following the U.S. strike on Iranian nuclear sites the night before, the Hostage Families Forum wrote, "Proud Americans came to stand by family members of the hostages, promising them not to forget all 50 Israeli hostages still held captive in Gaza," with a stirring rendition of the U.S. national anthem.
Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Actress, author, and Israel advocate Noah Tishby spoke at the gathering in Central Park, saying it is only going to end when every single one of our hostages is back home. So I'm here to say, bring them home now. The hostages have now been held for 626 days. Taking a look now at our programming for tonight on JBS for Monday, June the 23rd at 7 o'clock, FIDF CEO Steve Weil speaks with Jonathan Schanzer about the U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear infrastructure. At 7:40, an encore of Uplift Israel. At 8, Abigail Pogrebin speaks to sisters Danielle and Galeet Dardashti about their documentary podcast, The Nightingale of Iran. At 8:30, Eric Goldman speaks with Guy Nattiv and czar Amir to talk about their film Tatami, which follows an Iranian judo athlete who's pressured to drop out of a tournament for fear that at some point she will face an Israeli opponent. At 9, H. Alan Scott is on L'chaim. At 10, David Harris speaks to David Kaufman on defending Israel. At 10:30, an encore of the news, and coming up next, it's Good Week Israel. And that's the JBS News Update for Monday, June the 23rd, 2025. I'm Teisha Bader. Am Yisrael Chai.